My name is Lisa Harper. I live a quiet life with my husband David in a peaceful suburban neighborhood. As a freelance event planner who works from home, I spend most of my time inside the house. My mornings begin with checking emails over coffee, and I handle client meetings online. In the evenings, David comes home and we stand together in the kitchen preparing dinner. This ordinary routine was my most precious treasure. David works as a project manager at an IT company. He has a gentle personality and rarely raises his voice. We met in college and got married 10 years ago. We might not be the perfect couple, but I believe we've built a relationship based on mutual respect. On weekends, we take walks around the neighborhood or occasionally go to the movies. Nothing special, but I thought that was just fine. My younger sister Amy works at a bank. She's bright and outgoing with lots of friends. She's always looked up to me since childhood and comes to me whenever she has problems. Amy was sociable even as a child, and since I was more introverted, I think our parents doted on her more. But I never felt jealous about it. Seeing Amy's happy smile always made me happy too. One afternoon, while I was working on a client proposal in the living room, my cell phone rang. Amy's name appeared on the screen. When I answered, I heard her excited voice. "I have amazing news. I'm getting married." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then joy welled up from the bottom of my heart, and I found myself standing up from my chair. "Congratulations, Amy," I said. "What's he like?" Amy told me he was very kind and a successful businessman. His name was Michael Bennett. He ran his own company and was a real gentleman, Amy continued excitedly. "I can't wait to meet him," I replied. "He sounds wonderful." That evening, when David came home, I immediately told him about Amy's engagement. He smiled and said congratulations, but when he heard the name Michael Bennett, his expression seemed to cloud over for just a moment. But he quickly returned to his usual calm demeanor, so maybe it was just my imagination. A few weeks later, Amy called asking me to help plan the wedding. Since she knew what I did for a living, she wanted her sister to help. Of course, I was happy to do it. On weekends I'd go to Amy's place to help with venue selection and invitation design. Amy seemed truly happy, her face glowing whenever she talked about her fiancé. "He's just perfect," Amy would say. "He's kind and handsome." "Show me a picture," I said. Amy pulled out her smartphone and showed me a photo of her fiancé. A well-featured man gazed at the camera with a refreshing smile. "He looks wonderful," I thought sincerely. At that moment, David, who was in the living room, glanced at the photo. His face seemed to freeze for just an instant. But he quickly said he looked like a nice guy and put on his usual smile. I didn't think much of it. David had always been a bit shy around new people. The night before the wedding, while cleaning up after dinner, I spoke to David. "Tomorrow's Amy's big day, I'm so excited." He sat on the sofa and just said, "Yeah." He seemed distracted. "What's wrong, are you tired?" I asked. "No, I'm fine," David said. "Just have work on my mind." "Tomorrow's Amy's special day, let's enjoy it," I said. David forced a smile and said, "You're right." But his eyes weren't smiling. I felt something was off then, but didn't think deeply about it. My husband sometimes worried about work, so I figured this was one of those times. Tomorrow he'd be back to his normal self. Believing that, I went to bed that night. The next morning, I woke up early. Morning sunlight streamed through the curtain gaps, gently illuminating the bedroom. Looking over, David still seemed to be sleeping. But he was tossing and turning a lot, maybe not sleeping well. I quietly slipped out of bed and took a shower. "Today's going to be perfect," I whispered to my reflection in the mirror. I put on makeup and slipped into the dress I'd wear to the ceremony. It was a pale blue dress that Amy had chosen for me. She said the bright color would suit me. I arranged my hair and put on small pearl earrings. By the time I was ready, David had gotten up too. He began getting dressed more slowly than usual. Putting on his shirt, tying his tie. But he kept readying his tie in front of the mirror. Usually he got it right the first time, but today something was off. "What's wrong? Are you more nervous than usual?" I asked. David didn't look away from the mirror as he said, "No, it's nothing." But his voice lacked strength. On the drive to the venue, David was silent the whole time. He stared out the passenger window, but with eyes that weren't really seeing anything. "Are you really okay?" I said while driving. "You don't look well." "I'm fine, just didn't sleep well," David said. But his hands were clenched tightly in his lap. I felt a bit anxious but didn't press further. David was like this sometimes. When he was thinking about something, he'd retreat into his shell. At times like that, it was better not to force conversation. He'd talk when he was ready. Thinking that, I turned up the car radio a bit. When we arrived at the venue, a luxurious hotel banquet hall appeared before us. The entrance was decorated with an arch of white roses, like a scene from a movie. I was pleased that the venue I'd chosen for Amy had turned out perfectly. As we got out of the car, Amy came running over with a smile. "You made it," Amy said, taking my hands. She was already wearing her wedding dress, looking like a princess. "Congratulations, Amy. Today's going to be the best day," I said. Amy's eyes were filled with happy tears. "Michael will be here soon, I can't wait to introduce you," Amy said excitedly. At that moment, David started looking around. As if searching for someone, or trying to escape from someone. "David, what's wrong?" I touched my husband's arm. He looked at me with slight surprise and said he was going to the restroom. Then he quickly disappeared toward the back of the hall. I headed to the reception alone. Several guests had already arrived, and I exchanged greetings with Amy's friends. I could feel that everyone genuinely wished Amy happiness, which made me happy too. But David didn't come back. I took out my smartphone and sent a message asking where he was. A reply came immediately. Just said, "Be right back." I was starting to feel uneasy. David's behavior was strange. He'd seemed frightened of something all morning. But I didn't know what he was afraid of. Surely he couldn't be unhappy about Amy's wedding. He'd always cared for Amy like a little sister. While I was thinking this, Amy put her hand on my shoulder. "Michael's at the reception, I'll introduce you," Amy said. Her face was glowing with happiness. I hadn't seen her this happy in a long time. "Sure, let's go see him," I replied. Walking toward the reception, I could see the groom's back through the crowd. A tall man in a well-tailored suit. Good posture, refined in his bearing. What a nice man, I thought to myself. Amy really found someone wonderful. At that moment, David returned. He was slightly out of breath and grabbed my arm. "Lisa, wait," he started to say. "What is it?" I asked, but Amy was waving us over. Come here, come here." David looked like he wanted to say something, but in the end said nothing. With a resigned expression, he walked toward the reception with me. As we approached, the groom turned around. David's hand gripped my arm tightly and wouldn't let go. As if trying to protect me from something. But I didn't understand what David was afraid of. Just a few more steps to the reception. I could see the groom's smile. Refreshing, perfect. I felt David's palm sweating. I could hear his breathing getting rough. Why was he so nervous? I couldn't understand. But this was Amy's special day, so I couldn't worry about my husband's strange behavior now. I put on the brightest smile I could manage and stood before the groom. "Welcome, you must be Lisa," the groom said. "I've heard so much about you from Amy." His voice was calm, and a gentle smile played across his refined features. "Nice to meet you, Michael." "Looking forward to knowing you," I replied. The groom extended his hand. I reached out to shake it. That's when it happened. David, standing next to me, squeezed my hand hard. Hard enough to hurt. "Ow, David," I said quietly. Looking up at his face, my husband's face was deathly pale. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his lips were trembling. I'd never seen David like this before. Michael looked at David. "David, is something wrong?" he asked. His voice was kind, but his eyes weren't smiling. Something cold seemed to lurk in the depths of those eyes. David stared at the groom with an expression as if he'd seen a ghost. Several seconds of silence followed. The guests around us were starting to notice our strange atmosphere. "David, are you okay?" I whispered to my husband. He finally opened his mouth. "Sorry, I'm feeling a bit," he said. Then he pulled my hand and walked away from the reception. "Wait, David," I said, but my husband wasn't listening. He pushed through the crowd, heading toward the exit of the hall. I had no choice but to follow, being pulled along. Just past the reception, David pulled me into a corner of the hallway. His hand was still gripping my wrist. "We're leaving right now," my husband said in a low voice. "What? What are you talking about?" I asked. I couldn't understand the situation. Amy's wedding was about to start. Why did we have to leave? "Just trust me," David said. His eyes showed desperation. But I wasn't convinced. "The ceremony's starting, it's Amy's wedding," I protested. This was the most important day of Amy's life. As her sister, I had to be there. And yet my husband was trying to take me away. David grabbed my shoulders. "Lisa, I don't want to put you in danger," he said. "Danger?" I repeated. "What do you mean, what's dangerous?" David's words made no sense at all. This was a wedding venue, surrounded by lots of people. Where was the danger? David's voice was shaking. "That guy, that man," he started to say. But the words wouldn't come. He looked around as if afraid of something. Then I heard a voice behind us. "Is everything all right, you two?" The voice said. I turned around to see Michael standing there. He had a concerned expression, but there was something unnatural about that smile. David fell silent. I could feel his body go rigid. Michael approached us and said in a low voice, "David, it's been a while." The moment he heard those words, David's face contorted. "You," he said with a groan. I looked back and forth between them. "Wait, you know each other?" I asked. Michael answered with a smile. "Yes, from a long time ago." But that smile held something meaningful. As if there was a secret only the two of them knew. David took my hand and started walking. "Let's go," he said. "Wait, what's going on? Explain," I shouted. But my husband wasn't listening. He just looked ahead, walking quickly down the hallway. I was dragged along, following my husband. Walking down the hallway, David said, "Get in the car, right now." I stopped. "You're going to ignore Amy's ceremony," I said. David knew how much Amy had looked forward to this day. He knew about Amy working for months on the preparations, trying to make everything perfect. "You don't understand who that guy really is, the real purpose of this wedding," David said. I grabbed my husband's arm and made him stop. "Then tell me," I said. "Tell me what's happening." David took a deep breath and looked straight into my eyes. "That man's name isn't Michael," he said. "His real name is Ethan. A guy who was my best friend." I tried to understand those words. Ethan. David's best friend. But had I ever heard David mention someone named Ethan? I tried to search my memory but couldn't recall. David led me to the parking lot. Hiding behind a car, he began to speak. "Ethan, who's that?" I asked. David said with a pained expression, "Do you remember when we first started dating?" "Of course, college days, right?" I replied. "I had a roommate, a best friend named Ethan," David continued. "He was in love with you too." My heart skipped. "With me," I repeated. David nodded. "When you chose me," Ethan broke down. "After the heartbreak, we lost contact, and I thought he'd died." "But Michael is," I said. The words wouldn't come out properly. My head was spinning. David grabbed my shoulders and said, "He changed his face, with plastic surgery, became a completely different person. Changed his name too and disappeared from our lives." Plastic surgery. I pictured Michael's face. Those refined features, that perfect smile. Was all that created? "Why now, with Amy?" I asked. My voice was shaking. David answered, "Revenge, against me. The resentment of having you taken from him. That hasn't faded even after 10 years." My knees felt weak. "Then, what about Amy?" I whispered. Sadness showed in David's eyes. "A tool, to destroy our family." I shook my head. "No, I can't believe it." But my husband's eyes were serious. He wasn't lying. I could tell that much. We had to go back to the venue. We had to warn Amy. I tried to run, but David stopped me. "Calm down, Lisa. Without proof, she won't believe us." But I didn't listen. I had to protect Amy. Thinking that, I ran toward the venue. I walked through the hall searching for Amy. When I finally found her, Amy was laughing with friends. "Amy," I called out. Amy turned around. "Where were you?" "The ceremony's starting," she said. "Amy, listen, Michael is," I started to say. But Amy tilted her head. I took a deep breath and said, "He's David's old friend, someone named Ethan." David came to my side and continued, "He changed his face, with plastic surgery." Amy burst out laughing. "Ethan? Michael's name is Michael," she said. I tried desperately to explain. "He changed his face, with plastic surgery." But Amy's expression was hardening. "Are you jealous?" she said. "No, it's true," I shouted. But Amy shook her head. "I can't believe this, you're jealous of my happiness, aren't you?" she said. Those words stabbed my heart. Amy genuinely thought I was jealous. Then Michael appeared. "What's going on?" he asked gently. Amy threw herself into his arms and said, "Michael is my fiancé, I don't believe anything you're saying." Michael looked at us with a troubled smile. But his eyes were cold. I couldn't say anything more. David stayed quiet too. Amy and Michael walked away, and we were left behind. "What do we do?" I asked David. But my husband had no answer either. The ceremony began, and we took our seats. The guests around us were laughing happily. But I couldn't laugh at all. Staring at Michael standing at the altar, all I could do was pray. I hoped this was all a bad dream. But reality marched on mercilessly. During the reception break, Michael called David aside. "I need to talk to you," he said. The two disappeared into a deserted hallway. Anxious, I tried to follow. But I was detained by a friend and couldn't leave. A few minutes later, David returned. His face was ashen, his fists clenched tight. "What happened?" I asked. But David didn't answer. As the reception ended and guests began leaving, David and I got into our car in the parking lot. But we didn't start the engine right away. Inside the car, we sat in silence. David pressed his forehead against the steering wheel, looking exhausted. "Ethan," I said. "Who is he, really?" David looked up and slowly began to speak. "Do you remember when we first started dating?" he said. "Of course, college days, right?" I answered. I still remembered those days vividly. Meeting in the library, dating at coffee shops. "I had a roommate, a best friend named Ethan," David continued. "He had a distant look in his eyes. He was in love with you too." Hearing those words, my chest ached. David let out a deep sigh. "When you chose me," Ethan broke down. "What do you mean?" I asked. David continued with a pained expression. "Ethan was my best friend. We studied together, talked about our dreams late into the night. But after I met you, everything changed. Ethan was attracted to you too. I knew it. But you chose me." David's voice trembled. From that day on, Ethan changed. He shut himself in his room, stopped talking to anyone. I tried to talk to him many times, but he started avoiding me. And one day, he disappeared from the room. Took all his belongings. Left no contact information. I gasped. "And then?" I prompted. David continued. "I searched desperately. Asked friends around, but nobody knew. A few months later, when I contacted Ethan's family, even his parents didn't know where he was. Years passed, and I came to believe Ethan had died. But Michael is," I said. David nodded. "He was alive. With a changed face, changed name, as a different person. Completely transformed his face with plastic surgery." "But why with Amy?" I asked. My voice was shaking. David squeezed my hand. "Revenge, against me. The resentment of having you taken from him, it didn't fade even after 10 years. So he approached your sister. To destroy our family." I shook my head. "Then, what about Amy?" I whispered. "A tool," David said. "To make us suffer. Amy knows nothing. She thinks she's genuinely in love. But to Ethan, she's just a means to an end." I covered my face with both hands. No, I can't believe it. But there was no lie in David's words. We had to do something. But we didn't know what. Amy didn't believe our words. We had no proof. No way to prove that the man living as Michael was actually Ethan. From that day on, we began gathering evidence. David contacted friends from college. Searching for photos of Ethan, he pulled out old albums. I also researched plastic surgery on the internet. How could we prove what his face used to look like? How could we convince Amy? Several weeks passed. During that time, Amy called many times. "Why did you say those things?" She blamed me. "Michael is such a good person." I couldn't say anything. I could only answer, "I'm sorry." One day, David came home looking excited. "I found it," he said. "A college classmate who's now a doctor agreed to help. He has access to plastic surgery records. We might be able to track down the hospital where Ethan had his surgery." Over the next several days, we gathered information. We discovered that Ethan had undergone plastic surgery at multiple hospitals. Nose, chin, eyes. He had completely remade his face. Seeking an ideal face, he'd undergone surgery repeatedly. We also found psychiatric treatment records. They indicated a possible diagnosis of paranoid personality disorder. When all the evidence was assembled, I contacted Amy. "I need to talk to you, please meet with me," I said. Amy was reluctant at first, but eventually agreed to meet. We met at a cafe. Amy had an unhappy expression. "Please make this the last time," Amy said. I spread all the evidence we'd gathered on the table. Photos of Ethan from college. Plastic surgery records. Psychiatric treatment records. And I showed them alongside Michael's photos. Amy looked at the materials in silence. I could see the color drain from her face. "This is the truth about your fiancé," I said. Amy's hands were shaking. "I don't want to believe it," Amy murmured. But the match between Michael's facial features and the surgery records was obvious. Amy began to cry. I took her hand. "It's okay, we're here for you," I said. David also said gently, "We'll get through this together." Amy looked up and asked, "What should I do?" "First, confront him," David said. "But not alone. We'll be there with you." Amy nodded. "I'm scared," she said. I was scared too. But we had to do it. To protect her. That evening, we went to Amy's apartment. Michael had also been called there. When the door opened and Michael appeared, he had his usual refreshing smile. But seeing Amy's expression, that smile vanished. "What's wrong?" Michael asked. Amy said in a trembling voice, "What's your real name?" Michael's face stiffened. "What are you talking about?" He answered. But his voice held signs of agitation. "Ethan," David said. "Your name is Ethan." Michael glared at us. Then slowly began to laugh. That laugh was cold, tinged with madness. "Well done noticing, David," he said. The mask of smiles was gone now. "Revenge," Michael continued. "Everything you took from me, I'm taking it all back. Lisa, your happiness, everything." David clenched his fists. "Don't drag Amy into this," he shouted. Michael said coldly, "She's just the first step. Next is Lisa, then your entire life." David tried to punch him. But Michael calmly dodged. He sneered. "Proof? Who's going to believe you? I'm the perfect groom. You're just a jealous brother-in-law." David's body was shaking. I hugged my husband. "Stop," I said. "You're playing right into his hands." Amy stood up and said, "Get out. Right now." Michael looked at Amy. "You're being fooled too," he said. But Amy shook her head. "Get out, never appear before me again." Michael's face twisted. But in the end, he left. Amy consulted with the police. She submitted threatening messages he'd left and evidence of stalking behavior. The police issued a restraining order. But that alone wasn't enough. Michael was cunning. He understood legal boundaries and moved carefully to avoid leaving decisive evidence. One night, when Michael tried to break into Amy's apartment, David, who'd rushed over, restrained him. The police arrived and Michael was arrested for attempted assault. He was to undergo psychiatric evaluation. The diagnosis was paranoid personality disorder. He was imprisoned by a firm delusion that he was a victim who'd had everything taken from him by David. At the trial, Michael's lawyer sought leniency. He argued that Michael needed mental treatment. The sentence was probation with mandatory treatment at a psychiatric hospital. His marriage to Amy was annulled, and the restraining order continued. Several months later, I visited Michael at the hospital. David opposed it, but I had reasons I needed to see him. In the visiting room, Michael was waiting for me. He wasn't dressed in his usual perfect attire but wore hospital clothes. His face showed fatigue. "Why did you come?" Michael asked. I sat down in a chair and answered, "Not to forgive you, but I wanted to understand." Michael laughed. "Understand," he repeated. "Who could understand me?" "You tried to change yourself," I said. "But you shouldn't have changed your face." Michael's expression shifted. You underwent plastic surgery over and over, trying to create the ideal face. But every time you looked in the mirror, you felt it still wasn't enough, didn't you? Michael stayed silent. I continued. What you really needed to change was your own heart. Someone who can't love themselves can't love anyone else. Tears welled up in Michael's eyes. What have I been doing? He murmured. It's not too late, I said. Accept who you really are. Look inward, not at appearances. Michael nodded quietly. I stood up and left the visiting room. I didn't look back. 6 months passed. Amy gradually recovered from her trauma. Attending therapy, supported by trustworthy friends, Amy began to smile again. One Sunday, Amy came to our house. Thank you, Amy said, for making me see. I hugged her. We're family, of course. That evening's dinner, the three of us shared together. David cooked, and we laughed together at the table. David said, if I'd paid more attention to Ethan back then, maybe none of this would have happened. I squeezed my husband's hand. It's not your fault, I said. But you know, being aware is what matters in a family, I continued. When someone's suffering, noticing that pain and reaching out. That's what family is for. Amy nodded too. We can protect each other. Outside the window, the sunset spread across the sky. Orange light gently illuminated our dining room. I thought about what family means. It's not just blood relations. It's noticing each other's pain and supporting one another. That's what real family is. Changing one's appearance doesn't heal wounds of the heart. Michael learned that. And so did we. What's truly necessary is accepting yourself. And understanding, forgiving one another. Looking at David and Amy's smiling faces, I smiled quietly. We're not a perfect family. But we're a family that cares for and supports each other. That's what matters most. I learned that through this experience. On the table, warm dishes were laid out. We reached out and began eating together. Let's cherish this bond going forward. That's what I vowed in my heart.